introduce Mr. Daniel Gosher.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good morning.
I'm here representing the Australasian Centre for Corporate Responsibility. You might remember us from last year.
I certainly do. Give my regards to Bryn.
I will. She's watching right now. You can wave. Look, I'd like to commend the board for its commitment to transparency and its review of its industry associations, which were published late last year. For those of you that haven't read the report, BHP identified a material difference between its position on climate change and the Minerals Council of Australia. Unfortunately, despite installing a new CEO and implementing new climate and energy policy, the MCA's ardent coal advocacy has continued throughout 2018. Just last month on ABC TV, the new CEO, Tanya Constable, in response to a question about the future of thermal coal, stated that she didn't see a transition out of coal in the short, medium, or even the longer term at this stage. Does BHP agree with that position?
Well, let me make sure that I frame the question appropriately for shareholders here who may not be familiar with the industry association review that we did undertake last year and that we published last December, I think it was. Look, first and foremost, industry associations like the MCA play a key role in the development of standards, of best practice, and constructive policy. And you just need to look at the work that the MCA has done with companies in Australia around safety and Indigenous people policy. But we recognize that there's an increasing interest in industry associations. And so as a consequence of that, in last year, we undertook a review of all of our industry associations that actually have an active position on climate and energy policy. And so what we did is we mapped our policies against all the industry associations that we're a member of and mapped their policies on energy and climate. And we looked for material differences and we identified 3. As a consequence, we exited the World Coal Association. We identified some differences with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, which we're actively working with them on closing. As a matter of fact, the policy differences were largely around climate, and as a consequence, they've invited us in to their task force that developed climate policy for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. So we're actually acting as a force for good within the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. We think that's in the interest of all shareholders and stakeholders that we do that. In the case of the MCA, we identified some policy differences, but they've since addressed those and they've closed them, and they're aligned with our current policies. And you're right, there's been a change of leadership in the MCA in the last 12 months, and there is a new CEO. Now, I'm not familiar with the specific comments that she may have made on the ABC, but we monitor those things. And so we're going to continue to keep track, not just that their policy positions line up with ours and that we're comfortable with those, but that their advocacy lines up with ours and we're comfortable with those. So that process that we did, and I went around and saw 65 institutional shareholders this year, and all of them said that the work that we had done around industry associations, the mapping exercise and the publishing and the transparency of all of that was industry leading.
I agree.
And so, we feel very good about that. But the job's not done, and we'll keep working on it. We'll probably publish an update in the coming year around all of that. So thanks for your question. Thanks for your concern. We're still working on it.
Okay, I do have a follow-up. And it's about the Coal 21 Fund. So you might have to do a bit of an intro on that one as well. Coal 21 was set up by the industry to invest in low-carbon technologies funded by a levy on Australian coal exports, yet shamelessly advocates for the long-term future of thermal coal. In the last year, it flew 6 federal politicians to Japan to inspect coal-fired power stations. It's advertised coal on billboards in Canberra, and it's currently running TV commercials advertising clean coal. Can the board assure investors that Coal 21 is subject to the same governance principles that BHP applies to its industry associations?
So, good question. First of all, let's make sure everybody in the room understands who Coal 21 is. We're formerly known as ACCR, and the LET in ACCR is low emissions technology. So that group was set up, as you mentioned, Mr. Gosher, to invest in technology and research and the development of low emission coal technologies. Now, from all the modeling that we've done through our scenario analysis, we're big supporters of the Paris Accord, where we've done modeling around how the world's going to get to the 2 degrees Celsius outcome. In any plausible scenario, fossil fuels continue to play a role. So it's in all of our interests that we continue to invest in developing low-emission technology. And ACCR, or Coal 21 as it's now known, has spent $300 million investing in research and development around low-emission technologies over the last decade. And so we think we contribute to that in the manner that you described, and so we think that that's a good thing. In terms of their position on why they weren't involved in the industry association review, well, that's straightforward. They don't have an active position on energy or climate change. They don't have a position, and so we had nothing to map against, and so they were outside of our industry association review. In terms of advocacy, we don't oppose advocacy as long as it's factual and consistent with a technology-neutral framework. So if they're being advocates around the work they're doing around developing low-emission technology and making people aware of what's possible in low-emission technology, I don't think we have an issue with that. Thanks for your interest. Next question.
Chairman, I would like to introduce Ms. Rosemary Varane.